so she knows about the meeting. Hopefully she just is running a bit late.
Yeah.
And we're good to go now, John.
Okay, David. Welcome, everyone. This is a meeting of the Village of Sherwood Hills Plan Commission. Tonight is Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. It is 7:04 p.m. Let's call the meeting to order. David Sykes, do you mind doing the roll call? Or you need me to do it? I'll do it. I'm here. John Imes present. Mark Lederer?
Here.
Shadnam Lukfi?
Here.
Jim Etmansek? Thanks, Jim. Tessa Martin?
I'm here.
It says, it says Marin in the minutes. So anyway, yeah. Craig Weinhold.
Yeah, here.
And I don't see Kara Coburn-Ferris, but hopefully she'll be a chance to join us. Also present are Administrator Brian Mooney, David Sykes, and we also have some guests with us as well. Just want to note compliance with the open meeting law, Brian. Thanks so much. Item 4, approval of the minutes from August 12th, 2025. Hopefully you had a chance to review those. Chrissy sent those out this afternoon. And if so, you'd like to make a motion for acceptance. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you, Mark. Further discussion? We'll just correct that it should be Tessa Martin attending up at the first paragraph there. Otherwise, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Yep.
And motion carries. Item 5, public comments. This is an opportunity for community members to speak to the committee. No discussion or action may take place at this time, and speakers may be limited to 3 minutes. I know Michael Van Lanningham expressed an interest. Michael, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Can you hear me, John? Can you just confirm
Yes.
orally?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Great. I'm just calling in. I'm on the road tonight. Well, I'm in a single place. The two things I was going to say, I appreciate all the clear examples in the packet for the changes. I think, most of them are really good compromises that seek to address a lot of the uncertainty that the engineer has mentioned in his past appearances in front of plans. If I could sort of support one or the other of the setbacks, I think I'd support the minimal setback. I know that language does preserve, in terms of what was in the packet tonight, that 40-foot buildable envelope. And I think in a previous note to the last Plans Commission, Craig had, someone, I think it may have been Craig, had included language maybe excluding that part. I think of a 40-foot buildable envelope, because it would support different sizes of homes that could be built. I think that is good. And I think my general view is that we should have some minimum setback, but I don't know if 25 feet is the minimum. So I guess I would support a little bit more flexibility when choosing where to site a home that's maybe present in the minimal setback. So that's number one. Number two, I just wanted to also ask the Plans Commission if they could consider in the future amending the code as it stands now for R1 through R3, where parking minimums are concerned. In the recent ZBA, the appellants presented a case that involved parking minimums for the home that was at 1206 Sweetbriar. I'm not sure if that's, or maybe it was 1202. I'm not sure which address it was for. And the appellant argued that they would need 2 outside unenclosed parking spaces in addition to the garage that they had. If you look at the code in definition 79 of parking spaces, which is under outdoor parking area, which is 77, you see that parking space is like a separate definition in the code. And where it is elaborated on for R1 through 3 in Article G for parking. It says that the number of spaces for off-street parking houses would have, not the number of open parking areas. And I think that the code should be amended to clarify in Article G for R1 through 3 that it says when it says 2 spaces, off-street parking spaces, it means enclosed or unenclosed. Because I think by accepting the argument that was in front of the ZBA, we basically doubled required parking spaces by saying that, you know, a 2-car garage or a carport doesn't count. And so a home would need to have, you know, double the parking. And I think that's, you know, kind of runs counter to the village strategic plan of creating more flexible housing. And I still think it satisfies the village goal of having that off-street parking. But it would just be a really easy thing to clarify that that's what homes in the village are required to have, 2 off-street spaces that may be enclosed or unenclosed. So thanks for your time. Sorry, I went a little bit long.
Oh, that's great, Michael. Appreciate it. All right. Any other further public comments this evening? Further public comments? Okay, we will move on then. Item
John,
six-
if you don't mind, sorry about this. I couldn't get my hand up fast enough for.
No,
public
go ahead,
comments.
Brian.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, I would just like to clarify that I and I don't know a whole bunch of others, I would presume would agree with me on this front. I don't think that we should allow for, I understand Michael's point there about 2 on and 2 off street parking, but just allowing 2 spaces to go off street, for example, and not having folks to have off street parking. That doesn't work for the way that people actually use their garage spaces, their garages, or any of that. If you think about it, folks all the time have stuff that goes in and out of garages. They park across things. There's a point in having spaces that are in front of that garage so that people can, for deliveries and everything else, make that space work. Just deciding to all of a sudden have those spaces be consumed by a garage, which can be put right there without having other spaces in its place, creates an extremely awkward traffic flow for everybody around it. And there's a reason why all of these village homes have been designed to have those couple of spaces. In addition, the density with the parking along the pool and everywhere else, if folks don't have those spaces, the community parking during events for anywhere else that goes on, very easily get eaten up with ADUs and other things as they get developed. So I would highly encourage us not to reduce the number of parking spaces, thinking that that is a viable option.
All right. Thank you for that, Brian. All right. Any other public comments this evening? Craig, I see your hand up.
Just wanted to point out that there was a letter, an email sent, a public email. I don't know if we need to do anything special about that because this meeting recording would not know that.
Yeah.
Can it be added to the packet afterwards?
It'll be added to the packet, right? We can't
Perfect.
respond contemporaneously to comments on Facebook or emails that are sent, certainly during the meeting, even right before the meeting. So, but you know, each of the plan commission members will be provided with that, of course. All right.
Can I just, John, I don't know if I can reply to the comment. Otherwise,
yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Wait, okay. I think I definitely appreciate, the view and the intent of having that double off-street parking space, like both unenclosed and enclosed. And I think that's what I mean is there's an ambiguity because the way the code actually refers to those spaces are with the term parking space, off-street parking space. And so so that's what I'm saying is like, there is now a diverging opinion, whether between the ZBA and the code as to what it means. But I think that, you know, the code actually falls on the side of 2 enclosed spaces counting. So that's what I mean is like the plans commission should kind of be the final word, just like Craig is, you know, working to make sure the basement garage calculation is kind of sorted out for the village. And so that's kind of what I mean, because currently it could allow for those 2 enclosed spaces to count, or depending on if you're taking a separate definition, it may not. So that's all. Thank you again.
Okay. Thanks,
Hi,
Michael.
Mary Tepper finally getting her audio to work.
Hey, Mary. Good. Are you ready for your public comment?
I am. Gosh,
Splendid.
I lost a little bit of the last one. Sorry.
No
Just
worries.
turn off the background noise here. Okay. All right, guys. So I'm out of the house right now, trying to figure that out. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on agenda item 6 related to the zoning code. The intent of the zoning code is to promote and protect the comfort, public health, safety, prosperity, aesthetics, and general welfare of the people. The code exists to create orderly development, to regulate lot coverage and the intensity of use, and to guide the size and locations of structures so that we prevent overcrowding, preserve sunlight and air, and health and sanitation. Most importantly, it is to preserve and protect the beauty and environmental health of the village of Shorewood Hills. These aren't my thoughts and feelings. This is the text from our zoning code. With that in mind, look at our current zoning code for front yard setbacks. As it stands, it's overly complicated. It varies multiple exceptions in a single paragraph, and that ambiguity has allowed developers to interpret the rules in ways that we never intended. And now we have a chance to fix that problem. The minimal option makes some improvements, but it essentially preserves the same structure, and the exceptions are still buried in dense language, and the potential for misinterpretation remains. Now, the robust option, on the other hand, organizes the code into a clear hierarchy. First, the basic rule. Second, specific setbacks for University Avenue and University Bay Drive. And third, the block face rule. This structure makes it obvious which rule applies and in what order. And importantly, these two versions are not the same, as Michael pointed out. The minimal option retains a clause that says that the block face rule should never reduce a buildable lot's depth to less than 40 feet. The robust option removes that clause, and for good reason. That 40-foot provision is a relic, and it is unnecessary because any buildable depth concerns are already addressed elsewhere in the zoning code through lot size, lot coverage, and other dimensional standards. In practice, no existing law in our village would be pushed below 40 feet anyway, and if a condition was discovered, there's a variance process to address such a hardship. What the clause really does is create confusion, and it gives developers a loophole to avoid the block face rule. Now what we see, slicing and dicing existing parcels in ways that maximize profit and undermine neighborhood character. So by removing that outdated clause, the robust option ensures the block face rule applies consistently without exceptions that undermine its intent. And that clarity matters. It's going to help staff enforce the code. It's going to give residents confidence that the standards are being fairly applied, and it prevents developers from exploiting ambiguity. Most importantly, it makes the zoning code accessible to the community it serves. In short, the minimal option is a partial fix, but the robust option is the true solution, and I urge you to advance the robust option so that our community has a clear, enforceable, and fair zoning standard moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks,
And my second comment is in response to Michael Van Landingham. The topic of parking is not on the agenda tonight. I am wholeheartedly in opposition to his position on that code, and if that does come up on the agenda, I will prepare a public comment addressing parking and driveway design.
Okay, thanks, Mary, for that. Further public comments this evening?
I have a short comment, if I may.
Go ahead, Kate, you bet.
Sure. I'm glad Mary Tepper went before me because I don't need to repeat all the things she said. I wanted to voice my support for the robust option. I think it provides the clarity on the setbacks that is consistent with the intent of the code, as well as just the intent of the overall zoning code. In regards to parking, I think it's, as I know it's not on the agenda tonight, but as it's being considered as this group is looking at revisions to our zoning code, I think it's really important, to Brian Uching's point, to consider where people will actually park as opposed to where they're supposed to park. People park in their driveways, and I think we need to keep the cars out of the public right of way, as is the case at the 1202 and 1206 Sweetbriar homes. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks for that, Kate. Further public comment this evening? I see KWH 96. What would you like to provide a comment? Identify yourself.
Yeah, hi, Kurt Hansen. I'm trying to get my picture on.
Hey, Kurt.
I just wanted to comment on the calculation of FAR and using a negative number for it. As I read the ordinance concerning the uh, uh, garages and the 500 feet that will not count against the square footage, it says nothing about that being used to offset square footage anywhere else. It simply says the first 500 feet of a garage will not count against the square footage in the calculation of a FAR. I think it's really important that this group gives Brian Berquist clear directions on this. I don't think that the village has been calculating this in a legal manner that is consistent with what the ordinance says. In my brief research, there's simply no way that a square footage amount can be negative. And thus, if we are using a system that has us arrive at a negative square footage, there's something wrong with the way we are calculating it. And I don't think it's fair to Brian to ask him to continue to calculate it in this manner when it is not supported by our ordinance. The square footage can never be less than 0. And we simply have to follow what our ordinances say concerning the calculation of FAR. And all it says is that the first 500 feet will not be counted towards it. It says nothing about it offsetting any other square footage. I actually have absolutely no opinion about whether having garages in the basement is a good thing or bad thing. And if you would like to do that, I think it's fine to change the ordinance to do it. I just, like I said, I have no opinion. But I truly believe we have to follow the ordinance as written, and you should advise Brian Berquist to do so going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Kurt. Appreciate that. Further public comments this evening? And Kurt, if I could get you to reduce your or lower your hand, that would be splendid. Further public comments? Okay, let's move forward with the agenda then. Item 6, discussion possible action of draft proposed ordinance changes related to the zoning code. I know we're working off Craig's submittal that was in the packet. Brian Mooney, I know we couldn't get Ben Rohr to join us tonight, or Brian Berquist. You can just confirm that they weren't available?
That is correct. Both had conflicts this evening.
Okay, all right. So Craig, do you want to just, I mean, I have my notes here. I'm sure commission members have, their thoughts or questions or comments. Do you just want to walk through what you prepared, summarize briefly the minimal and the robust versions, your interactions with Ben Rohr, our planning consultant with Vandewall? Why don't we do that for starters?
Yeah, and if we can, we'll focus just on that minimal and robust, because there's another page of some other stuff. We'll save that till the end.
Okay.
We obviously had a good discussion a month ago when we had some language from Vandewall that was used terms like infill lots. And at first I was very enthusiastic. I really liked their language because our village is already built up, right? We only have infill lots to worry about. But then I started thinking about natural disasters. Then I thought about garden homes. We've got a whole block that's gone. And then someone pointed out, what about the golf course? What if in 30 years we don't have a golf course and that all becomes developed? What rules are going to govern that development? And I was like, guess what? We need to keep this as close to the original language as possible. And so, the idea of talking about infill lots and some of that stuff, basically we put aside, and we just said, what's the simplest thing? Based on comments last time, everybody is, I think, most comfortable when we make as few changes to code as possible. I hope that's accurate. Obviously, there's been times in our history where we've made major changes, like the FAR stuff. Big changes, lots of vetting and so forth. But small changes, just moving things around, seems to be more palatable. So the two options for addressing the setback, the minimal one, literally is going into the code and going to the 25 feet and typing period, hitting enter, and hitting tab, and then striking out an or less than or less clause. I can share my screen if that's helpful.
Yeah,
Um,
let's do that, Craig. I think that'd be great.
Let's see. Um, Application. Oh, I guess I can just do this window. Yeah, I'm sorry, I've got other stuff around it. Hopefully that's readable. I'll zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, you'll need to zoom in. There we go. That's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the minimal, and it does this for both R1 and R2. I did not want to even think about R3. R3 has so much stuff in there from, and I've learned a lot about the history of it. It's pretty incredible, the things about Lake Mendota lots and stuff. So R3 we're ignoring. R1 and R2 though have this, and so again, this language is all the same. The striking out of or of less. This has to do with this block face rule, which says, minimum setback line of more or of less than 25 feet. Karl Franz declared this was ambiguous because of this language. And that's why he set it aside in 2021 on some projects. I don't know if Brian Mooney would concur with that or how that would go, but we don't want to open up the door to very close setbacks or no setbacks. And so striking the less than part and just focusing on the larger ones. So this is a street like Crestwood or Sweetbriar or many of our streets where if you go look at the houses, if they're all set up to be 30 feet or 40 feet or 50 feet from the street, well, new houses would have to follow that. This law has kind of governed our village. The language is a little bit antiquated, a little bit hard to read. I completely understand. Peter Lewis sent a note. He talked about how the period here and having these as being two equal things. That could be a vulnerability, just a legal vulnerability to a clever lawyer. We might need to change this to be, say, 25 feet minimum, and then have all this long stuff. So that could be one thing to address Peter's concern. But anyway, so this is a real simple change. Language is basically the same. We get rid of the ambiguity that Karl Franz talked about, and we make it clear that the 40-foot buildable depth only applies to the application of the block face rule. And it does not apply to lowering the minimum yard dimensions below 25 feet. The robust one, I'll scroll down, I'll skip over, R2 is the same.
Yeah.
The robust one takes a page out of some of our newer ordinances that use a lot of indentation to make things more readable. And I like that. And we can't respond to the public comments, but I think some people responded similarly that, it's kind of good just to scratch everything and then start off with a nice indented structure and that calls out all the various logic that you're supposed to apply. And that's become important because, for example, exceptions for specific streets, well, R1 doesn't have any, but R2 does. I'll skip ahead to R2. So R2 has, certain streets have different things. And before this was all mashed into that one long sentence. But by doing the indentation, the minimum front setback shall be 25 feet. Here the exceptions are. Here's the block face rule, the 25%. This does eject the 40-foot buildable depth and the 70-foot buildable width for corner lots that are under different ownership. Again, some of these kind of a little bit stranger laws, we looked at these small lots where setbacks might be pushed. And there are so many other rules governing them, from parking spaces to buildable lots, 25%, to grass areas. I think 1/3 of your lots have to be green space, so you can't cover it with patios and so forth. Small lots have enough problems. Even in the most recent example, The house that was being built was nowhere near 40 foot deep. Nothing gets close to that. It's just kind of a different universe. So anyway, this gets rid of that. That's one piece of old language that seems to have run its course, seems to have no value, and so I removed it from the robust. But if people wanted to, we could certainly add it back to this same robust structure and re-add that. So that's minimal and that's robust. And I would love to hear what other zoning members or plan commission members think.
Shabnam, I saw your hand up. Did you have a question or a comment?
Well, sort of. I think that when municipalities write ordinances, we should be thinking about the neighborhood, the streets we have, and the policies behind the decisions we make. And I'm uncomfortable with a reactive setback, changes that are purely reactive. I think that the first part where if you scroll up to where we're removing the or less kind of makes it's like, do you have
That's right here.
like
we go.
here, if you already have a minimum setback of 25 feet for, so it's only some streets that, is this saying that your setback is the 25, or if most people, 25% of houses on that street have a 40-foot setback, then you are obligated to use the 40-foot setback? Or is it the 25 setback? It's not clear.
Yeah, and I mean, remember before this was all just one big sentence. So this is, used to be one thing lumped together. It was even less clear then. So the ordinance on the books right now is 25 feet unless, your example, if all the other houses on the street are 40 feet, well, then
Okay.
you're obliged to use that 40-foot setback.
Let me ask a question. I live on a street, and 25% of the houses on my street, their houses are 40-foot back. Another 25% are 25 feet back. What is my setback?
So that's up to the zoning administrator. I've wondered about that. Again, I have a problem with this language because, I would expect the zoning administrator to take the largest. If there's 50% of one and 40% of another, I would hope they choose the 50%, but I don't know.
So what we have is a code where a homeowner has to defer to the judgment of an individual for what our rules are and not be able to read the rules themselves. So I think that's my comment, is that makes me uncomfortable. And I also think that the problem with this part is by removing the or less for streets that maybe everybody on that street has a 15-foot setback, and I want to do a home renovation, I no longer have my 15-foot setback. I now have a 25-foot setback.
Yeah, if I could address that, that's an excellent point. When this rule was, when the floor area ratio was adopted, there was a different kind of a appeal, a way. I don't even know the historical details. There was a different way homeowners could lobby for variations in this. I think it was a CUP, conditional use permit, and now that's been replaced with a zoning board of appeal. So at least my thinking, and again, maybe we could add more language to make it more clear, but my thinking is that if you have front yard 25 foot, rear yard 25 foot, if you can't fit in that, you're going to ask for a variance. And we've got some very good examples in the village where that has happened in the past. Camille on Oxford, Adamani, her house is one of these kind of squat lots. And whenever it was built, they said, okay, you can relax the rear setback. So her backyard is, instead of 25 feet, only is 15. But this is where that human element comes in. In those sort of squashed spaces, today it would go before zoning board of appeals, and they would say, let's look at the hardship. Let's look at the whole situation. Let's figure out where these lines should be relaxed to.
I think that there should be a variance process for somebody who wants something that is outside the norm. But the variance process shouldn't be a part of the norm. The norm has to be whatever we decide, that everybody, it's very clear. We need a code that is clear and does not rely on somebody's interpretation, and it doesn't rely on getting a variance. So that's whatever we pick, I think it needs to be clear, and it should be something for fair, not reactive.
Okay, thanks,
I'm
Shabnam.
gonna make one last comment so then I don't actually talk anymore.
Okay.
I realize that the 40-foot depth is like really bothers people because of the specific situation recently, that it shocked us that it could mean you could have a 0-foot setback. That's a problem. So I don't like that part of it. But the reason I kind of like the 40-foot depth is that there's very little where it's something that a homeowner can be like, well, I have a right to this. I have a right to have a size of a home that is this minimum amount. And it's hard to take that away from people.
Okay, thanks, Shabnam. Other thoughts from or questions from commission members?
I can comment just that,
Yeah, Tessa.
yeah, I think that the robust option is much more clear than the minimal option. I think that the edits here do change, do make it with a lot more clarity, which is what we're seeking here. And I think with any code or policy or ordinance, it's not going to work for every single person in their unique circumstances, but it has to work for the majority or be, what the bulk of the community agrees with, which it seems this does meet that need, with always the option for variances and appeals in unique situations that would be obviously open to more interpretation, but that's why they go through the process. But I think this fits the needs very well with the edits made.
Thanks for that, Tessa. I had a question for Craig. For the block face rule, could that require setbacks larger than 25 feet based on a particular block where you've got, houses that are all 40 feet back or 40 feet, 45 feet back?
That's kind of the exact point of this. It used to be kind of ambiguous because it said more than 25 or less than 25. But by striking that, and that now this really only applies to those cases where all the houses are set far back from the lot line, like Crestwood or places like that.
So was that the genesis then of the whole 40-foot buildable lot provision?
The 40-foot buildable lot historically was globbed onto this. So basically saying, hey, your house. So if all the houses have chosen a 70-foot setback, but where our streets kind of taper together at the corners, those lots on the end aren't going to have that much space, and so they're going to be forced at that point to kind of relax their setback. Maybe all the other houses are 70 feet and they have to go to 65. And I think that's where the 40-foot buildable depth is. I don't know what people were thinking about in 1930 or whenever it was written, but that is kind of my impression. We have a lot of very unusual lot sizes, especially in Shorewood Hills. College Hills, not quite as much, but Shorewood Hills has very strange lots.
Craig, as you thought about the robust version, did you identify lots then that would be unbuildable compared to the current code?
Every lot is buildable if it's 5,000 square feet. And part of, if we make these changes before, I'd talked about maybe changing the definition of R2 to be larger lots or something. We have so many controls on these small lots. I mentioned before, like the coverage rules, the green space rules, the parking rules. you know, this is almost the least of the problems, you know, when it comes to siting a house. And this gives all the neighbors comfort knowing that there will be a setback, that people will not try to encroach to the edge of the street, as we've seen. Um, you know, I have looked at lots that are already kind of strangely sized and saw how they were resolved. Like I said, some of them seem to resolve by changing the backyard. Some of them seem to be resolved by changing the front yard. Going forward, I would probably leave that to the ZBA. But to Shabnam's point, you know, maybe language here could be added. The nice thing about this robust form is that we have an indented structure. We can easily add 4 ABC, 5 ABC. As we come up with other guidance, we can easily add that without worrying about, you know, breaking stuff. And that's been, I think, one of the problems with our existing ordinances is they're so brittle that any small change can change, you know, quite a bit of meaning. So I think this structure, you know, hopefully would be the beginning of, you know, other changes.
Shabnam and then Mark.
So I agree with Tessa that this is clear. It's better. It's got more clarity. It's nicer to read. Could the minimum front yard setback be 20 feet? Like why did we pick 25?
Someone in 1928.
I mean, if we look at other municipalities, what is the norm? Is 25 too restrictive? Not restrictive enough? Is it 20 feet that's more appropriate, or 15 feet? But if that's just the number, the way the ordinances reads is more clear.
Yeah, it sounds like it's very rare to have houses in the neighborhood that are less than 25. So I think if we're looking at the majority of homes right now, it would fit. That measurement would fit well.
Can we, if this goes to the board, because it's got to go to the board, can we get data to support it? Like,
Yeah. So the one street where I've found 2 houses of Viburnum, there's a couple houses, and it's kind of hard to tell the setbacks because they have sort of recessed garages, but those recessed garages seem to come, you know, within 10, 15 feet of the street. So there's a couple, but I could certainly look around and try to come up with an inventory. Obviously, any house that exists would be grandfathered in. You know, there's no concern about that. This is only for new houses. But to answer your question about different setbacks, we have, you know, other communities. It depends on the density. You know, as you get into urban areas where buildings are side by side, 0-foot setbacks are common. You know, buildings go right up to the sidewalks or the streets. In our village, we have a number of other ordinances, and this was actually a real problem with the 0-foot setback that we were facing. We have other ordinances that say 20 feet for this or that, like the topography, the change of topography ordinance, or preservation of topography says that you can't change the grade within 20 feet of your property line. Well, all of a sudden, if you're, you know, that's kind of expecting a 25-foot. You know, we've got other parts of our ordinances that sort of assume the minimum setback is going to be 25 in the front and in the rear yard, and they have been kind of written with that in mind. So if we did lower it, which we certainly could, we would have to kind of scour the rest of the ordinances for collateral things that depend on having 25 feet.
Mark, we'll go to you next.
So I have both a technical question and a process question.
Yep.
The technical question is with regard to this block face rule. As I read this, it isn't clear to me, and maybe I'm missing something, about where this setback line is. In other words, if you've got a block and you've got 25% or more on, and it satisfies that criteria that are more than 25 feet, and one's 40 and one's 50 and one's 60, I look at this block face rule and it doesn't tell me, at least it's not obvious to me, where the new setback is. I know it's more than 25 feet, but is it the minimum? Is it the average? Is it the maximum of what those 25% houses are?
Yeah, if I can address that first,
Yeah.
that's an excellent point. I mean, this has the word, minimum. The Vanderwall language that we looked at last month used average, and I've had some other people mention average. I I don't think average is, I mean, in choosing just to say the minimum one. So basically, if you had 50 and 70 and 60 and 90, the minimum would be 50. And that's what you would be required to go by. So basically, you would have the same setback as the most encroaching of the houses on the front setback. But certainly, average would be a fairly easy change to put in here if people are more comfortable with that.
Well, I'm just not sure that that minimum refers to the 25%, or it might refer to the entire block, just the way I read it. I don't see that it's qualified that the minimum is the minimum with respect to that 25% or the minimum with respect to all the houses on that street. Maybe that's just me, but I think I would look for a little bit, something in there that would clarify that that minimum applies only to that 25% or more, and not to any of the other houses on the street.
That's that's a good point.
Okay. And then my process question is, let's say that the Plan Commission recommends something. Then it goes to the public hearing.
Correct.
And the public hearing is before the Plan Commission, or is it before the board?
It would, right now, the schedule would be for a public hearing on Tuesday, September 30th.
Before what body? The Plan Commission.
Before the Plan Commission.
And so the Plan Commission at that public hearing would have an opportunity to modify the ordinance that it recommended, that essentially came to the public hearing. Is that right?
Brian, maybe you can help me out on that. That's my understanding. We're there to have the public hearing. I anticipate the commission will be able to discuss and then advance a recommendation of that ordinance to the board for the next board meeting.
So you think that when the recommendation from the Plan Commission comes back to the Plan Commission in the forum of the public hearing,
yeah,
the Plan Commission has total discretion to, in the course of the hearing, to modify that ordinance yet again before sending it on to the board. Is that your interpretation?
I'm a little fuzzy on that. Brian, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I believe that is correct. And the version, hopefully we have an agreed upon version to present at the public hearing ironed out tonight so that it makes it a little bit easier when it's brought forward in roughly 2 weeks. But yes, I believe you can still change it pending the public comments and public feedback received the evening of the public hearing.
Yeah, that's all I was concerned about, whether it was just a yes/no decision by the Plan Commission in the course of that public hearing, or whether the Plan Commission had the discretion to further tinker with the language in the course of the public hearing and then either recommend it onto the board or not.
Yeah, Mark, it's a good question. It's my understanding that the board has yes/no, but the board can't redo that ordinance on the fly. I think they have to send it back to the Plan Commission to be reworked if it's not acceptable.
Okay, I mean, it would just be good to understand what the ground rules are.
Yep.
Before we enter into this process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was hoping Ben would be here to answer a question like that. So
yeah.
But thanks for asking.
I agree with Shabnam's comment earlier that we're really looking for ordinances that are as clear as possible.
Yeah.
We're not looking to give the zoning administrator any latitude. That would be the goal from my perspective. And it's only in those instances where someone rejects the ordinance and on that basis seeks a variance, but not because of some issue of interpretation. I understand that's not always possible, but I think the ordinance should be as clear as possible and eliminate as much discretion and judgment as possible on the part of the zoning administrator.
Appreciate that, Mark. You know, my hope is that tonight we're going to be able to advance the setback stuff at a minimum. I don't know if we're going to get much into the FAR and some of the other things. I think we're going to need some more time on that. And I think we're going to need principals at the meeting to kind of flesh out some of that, just as a just from an expectation standpoint. But I hope we're going to be able to come out of this meeting with the setback pretty much fleshed out and at least have a vote on that at some point this evening. Other questions, comments? Craig, are we looking at R1 or R2 right now?
This one is R1 because it has no street specific exceptions, but it does have the spot for that.
It had the bigger side yard. That's why I was confirming. Because the R2 is 10 feet, I think.
R2 was breaking between two pages, so it was kind of hard to read.
Yeah. I have Shabnam's hand up. Shabnam.
Quick question, Craig, what would happen if we deleted that paragraph about 25%? What if it didn't exist and the minimum setback was 25?
Well, so on a street where all the houses are currently, say, 70 feet or 100 feet, like on Crestwood, somebody could go and put a house right at 25 feet. And there would be no reason for the neighbors to complain.
Yeah, it's not a theory. It's already happened. That's what Crestwood is.
Right.
That's exactly what happened at Crestwood. The houses were all set further back, but the houses that were built are closer.
Is there a way to tinker with this to clarify that the block face rule would supersede the 25-foot setback minimum? That number 3 supersedes 1 when needed?
Well, the block face rule, as written here, it says it only is for more than 25 feet. So this, in other words, this could. Yeah, I see what you're saying. This does supersede that. The minimum setback is 25, and this can make that setback farther. It cannot shrink that setback to less than 25 feet. Maybe you have to re-ask your question. I might have missed it.
You're right, but I just don't think that it says that here. I could read this and say, oh, I have a choice between 1 and 3, and I pick 1.
I know the block face rule says when, so that's kind of a imperative. You know, if this is true, then no building erected hereafter or altered shall project beyond the setback line so established. This is, I mean, my read is that this is fairly strong, but I get your point. I mean, we could shore it up a little bit if you have some language suggestions to.
You could just ensure that paragraph where you say before when, just say, notwithstanding the minimum front yard setback in 10.4 whatever, and then continue the sentence. Notwithstanding that, something that.
Yeah.
That's perfect, Mark. That was great.
That's good.
Clever.
Setback of 4A. I'm making paper notes. I don't want to have people watch me type, so I'm making paper notes. But I think that sounds like an excellent inclusion. Now, if other items are added, for example, the exceptions for specific streets, could we also just say exception for block face rule?
You know what
It-
I would do? We could support this idea that we all agree on, and if do we have to figure out that technicality right now to
it'd
still
be
support it?
nice. Yeah, I'd love to get the language to Brian Mooney.
Can I ask another question? What is the point of number 2? Exception for streets. There's no exception. Why? I don't get it.
Just as a placeholder, so that
Right.
4A2 always refers to street exceptions, because if I scroll down to R2,
Okay,
Right,
okay,
two is
got it.
R2 has a bunch of them. And, who knows, and say Blackhawk gets turned into housing at some point, R1 might go farther west and we may have exceptions, but yeah. But so the exceptions for specific streets, could we say exception for block face rule? Do you think that would have the same force as the notwithstanding clause?
You know what you need? Maybe you need the notwithstanding in the number 1. So number 1 should read notwithstanding the block face rule in section blank, the minimum set front yard setback shall be.
Yeah, but it's also, we'd have to also say the exceptions for specific streets and, number 4, number 5, that would kind of sort of undo the indented readable structure, I think. Yeah, I'm okay putting notwithstanding in A. I think, that's makes it very clear.
I'm gonna say let's agree on an idea, but there are people like we heard at the ZBA where a comma changes a meaning, and I would refer to the people who do this for a living to
Yeah.
give us the comma, the period, the semicolon that we need.
But I think that was my point earlier, that if we vote this out and it goes to a public hearing, we will have that opportunity to insert the commas, the periods, we'll clean this up as much as we can, and hopefully it'll be something acceptable to the majority of the plan commission. And then we will look at it again in the public hearing, and the comments before the public hearing.
I was very relieved to hear that from John, that we can make changes at that public meeting.
It's not advisable. But it's not prohibited, it's my understanding. Brian Mooney, we've already noticed this public hearing for Tuesday, September 30th, have we not?
Yes, we actually have already posted this.
Okay, so when do we need to finalize the version for purposes of the public hearing, working with Ben Rohr at Vanderwall? Is there a date certain on that? Or is it just the regular packet timeline?
I believe regular packet timeline, but I'd like to give it to Ben with an opportunity to review in advance of publication for the public hearing.
Right. Okay. And I think would probably be a good idea to share that with the Plan Commission as well ahead of time.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. See if there's any additional comments, questions. Okay, other thoughts? Comments? Reactions?
If I could, so I have one set of language definitely to add. There were 2 things I'd like to kind of get people's sense of if we should think about adding. One is to
Yeah, I mean, my read on it was average would probably be the easiest to enforce and to communicate, but I um, I would turn to the commission on that.
The Vanderwall language had one interesting bit. If we do average, that I would want to take from theirs, and that was excessive properties. We have sometimes a house will be really far back. It'll be more than twice, and so it excluded those. It also talked about vacant lots. How does a vacant lot count? So they had some language in there about which properties to include and which ones to exclude. That's kind of why I like the minimum. You're kind of going by a house that's already there and you're saying this is what we're going to do rather than trying to find something else. It's just a little bit simpler. The Vanderwall language, if you go back to last month's packet, you can read through it. It was nice, but it had a lot of things.
Have you thought about how these changes could impact accessory structures unintentionally?
Since this is all front yard, it should not at all. The rear yard is where we're going to have to start making some changes with ADUs, and I think we understand that, and that's why I think this robust structure kind of allows for that, or sets the table for that, because rear yards, we may need to have structures there, or allow for them. So.
Okay. Okay, other thoughts, questions for Craig?
John, one of the feedback that I received from Ben at Vanderwall pertaining to the front yard setbacks, he referenced figure 10-1-100H, and he said it's listed as minor accessory structures, and some of them have currently have front setbacks less than 25 feet. But it does state that in the draft amendment language that no building erected hereafter or alerted shall project beyond the setback line so established. So he thought that the intent was still to allow minor accessory structures within the 25-foot front yard setback in accordance with that reference figure. But that just might be something we want to double check before moving things forward.
And when you say minor accessory structure, you mean sheds and porches?
Yeah, I believe that's what's referenced.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to find H. Sorry if I'm
It's
making people dizzy.
10-1-100 and then H.
There we go.
Yeah.
There it is. Here's some examples of those. So a dog house, I guess, in the front yard, or oh no, these say whether they're in the front side or rear yard. And front yard, a lot of them say not, but like a deck you can have in the front yard and the rear yard. So this was when I was talking about the collateral damage to having a smaller setback. This is kind of one of the examples. Here's something that's hard coded at 25 feet.
Right.
Or 15 feet. So. more here. There's a few more.
And
This one.
yeah, Craig, I also had a question about how are we treating outliers on this? If you've got one unusually deep lot or shallow lot, how do you see these changes impacting that?
Well, we have a lot of unusually sized lots.
Yeah,
It seems like the kind of the narrow, at least in College Hills, 50 feet was sort of the width. We see some that are 47 or 48, but in a 50-foot width is pretty narrow. But then those same lots are 150 or 200 feet deep. So usually the front and rear setbacks are not a problem. Where they have been a problem, again, I kind of mentioned, is where two streets sort of come together. We don't have straight blocks. We have a lot of sort of these angles, and the best, if you don't mind, I'll just pull up DCI map. DCI map is a great way to view that, and I've spent a lot of time looking at lot lines here, because you can really get a sense of where the problems are. Now, the position of houses in DCI map are not accurate. Brian Berquist will say they're always plus or minus 10%.
right.
The lot sizes are plus or minus 10%. But at least it tells you where you need to go look. And I like looking at Oxford here, because you can see this nice straight line for all the backyards. And you can see that the house has all these front yards. This is Kale's, I think this is, no, this is I forget whose house is whose, but
Greg, you need to
anyway.
change your view. You're still showing
Oh,
Yeah, you're
color.
still showing the right.
You're not seeing it. Sorry.
That's
I
right.
need to,
Thanks, David.
thank you for helping me not be a fool.
No, I was getting ready to say something, and David beat me to it.
So, are you seeing a map of Oxford?
We definitely are.
Okay. So here's the straight line between all the houses, nice and clean. Then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, we have this house, and they had a choice. They could have kept the 25-foot rear yard and moved the house closer to the lot line, but they kept that conformance with the front. And this is the kind of the outlier that I think would, the way the minimal changes we're talking about tonight, that would have to go before the ZBA to get approval. They would say, hey, we have a problem. We can't do 25 in the front and 25 in the rear. What should we do? And that's going to depend on who the neighbor is here, how wide the lot is, what that specific street looks like. Is it better to maintain that front conformance or the rear conformance? Trying to write an ordinance that covers that situation is going to be really hard to get right. And that's, you look at all these other strange lots, other places where that's happened. They're everywhere. I mentioned Viburnum. So here's like this house on Viburnum. The lot goes all the way through from Viburnum to Crestwood.
Right.
That's the simplest one, or the one that was squeezed the most. This one right here, though, is squeezed. This one is almost certainly less than 25 feet from the right of way, and that's just because Viburnum is a nice circular road, and this is the one that got squeezed. And Crestwood, they were all set back. These are the two on Crestwood that are set farther forward. You can see all their neighbors have these extreme setbacks.
Yep.
And these two got pushed forward. They could have been put up at 25 feet. They did not. I'm very happy the builder said, hey, let's put it back to 70 feet. So they don't stick forward nearly as much as they could have.
I think it was more like 40.
40
45. Yeah, I think
something
that's
like
my
that.
recollection there. Yeah.
So anyway, DCI map is a great way to kind of find these outliers. And Shabnam asked earlier if we could get a report. I think before the public meeting, I'll probably try to do that and just try to come up with some, what properties, would be these unusual ones. If they were redeveloped, if the house was burned down and had to be rebuilt, what would they be subjected to?
Okay. So why don't we, that's helpful, Craig. Why don't we go back to your robust language again?
Okay.
And I want to ask the commission if we should tweak any of the language to align with any, policy goals. So are you including additions, porches, and garages as part of it, Craig, or there's no changes there? Or?
The front setback applies to any reconstruction of the structure. So either rebuilding a structure or altering it.
Yeah.
There's one exception is that front porches, I believe, are allowed to encroach the setback. So if the main face of your house is at the setback, that front porch can go 5 feet or something into the setback, but that's addressed elsewhere.
And for the averaging, does that apply to all structures or just principal new structures?
Well, the Van de Waal language had it go to, I think, 5 structures on either side, and it did not include structures that were more than twice the distance back, the exceptional ones.
Yeah.
And then it did include vacant lots as 25 feet. I think that was wrong. I think it should not include it. Vacant lots should just be excluded from that calculation. You should look at the houses that exist there. And if the block is empty and yours is the first house, you're the one that's going to be paving the setback for everybody else.
So is there a tweak in your language then that's needed to address the vacant lot issue, or are you mute on that?
Well, only if we change this to average. So if we have this language that it's, and Mark said it's maybe not clear and we need to clarify it, but it's, right now, if there was a house that was 50 and one that was 70 and one that was 90 and one was 60, the minimum setback of that would be 50. It would be the house that's closest. If we did an average, of course, then it would be 50 plus 60 plus 90 plus 70, divided by 4, and then you would get something like 65 feet. And if we did that, then we would have to be able to have some additional language. I've referred to it. If you don't mind, I'll pull up.
Yeah, and I see Tessa's hands raised too. Tessa, do you want to do a quick question?
I won't.
Or comment?
Yeah, it was about this. I was just trying to better understand this now that people have pointed out. I'm having trouble wrapping my head around it. But
Yeah.
So is this saying that, like, if there was a street with 12 houses on it, to make easy math, and 3 of them had a setback of 40, but the rest of them, the 9 other ones, had 25, that any new build or altered build would have to go back to 40? Or are we averaging all 12 houses to be 26.7 or whatever it is? Like, is that what we're saying, or are we?
Good question.
Very good question. And this gets to the ambiguity of the original language, where it had this, when 25% or more, which I kept that exact language here because I figured, hey, it's been good for 100 years. Why change it? I would probably like to say this when, the majority of houses or something like that, for that exact situation. If I was the zoning administrator, I would say, no, it's 25 feet because the majority of houses are 25 feet. That's what you should honor. That's something that zoning administrator would determine how to interpret that. And that's definitely a piece of language that I wouldn't mind updating. But again, I was trying to go for as few changes from the 100-year-old ordinance as possible.
I feel like the goal is that it's in line with what the majority of the street looks like with all the verbiage that we've heard so far. So that would make more sense to me, that it would be, if the majority is set back more than 25 feet, then you would average the setback and that would be what you could build at.
Similarly, Craig, if you had, like on Viburnum, you've got less than 75 or less than 25 feet setback. So the averaging would apply then as well?
No, so this one is only applying to more than 25 feet.
Okay.
The original language here said of more or of less than 25 feet. And that was language that our previous administrator ruled was ambiguous and a reason to toss out the whole clause.
Okay.
And I thought about ways to try to tackle that,
Do both?
but I couldn't do it, with any sort of clarity. And I think we were been mostly in agreement that a 25-foot minimum setback, because it is so many other ordinances depend on that. It didn't seem to be good to encourage setbacks less than that.
Yeah, I see David Sykes' hand raised. David.
Thanks, John. I don't want to butt into the conversation too much.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
Jim might remember this from when the Plan Commission considered a possible Crestwood overlay district. One of the things they did was talking about average setbacks, and it was the average of the two adjacent properties is where they were talked about the average setback.
Right.
So if you had a 50 and a 70, the house in the middle would be 60. It was like 40 and 110, the average setback would be like 70, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me because the whole purpose of this rule is aesthetics, right? It's just the way it looks. And you're going to be most influenced by the houses that are in close proximity and not the ones at the other end of the block. But maybe that's just me.
I'm going to try to pull up the van der Waal language, and I think we can step through that because that had more things about that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Give me just 1 second. This was in the packet last month. Meeting materials. Here we go. Is this sharing again?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Oops. Hang on a second. Sorry. Download it.
While Craig is doing that, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Sheldon.
Could we have like a schedule? I mean, we have what, 20 streets? And that every street we could, calculate what the setback is. And somebody who wants to renovate their house, well, look at Schedule A. It says what the setback is for your street, since our neighborhood is so vastly different. And the goal is to preserve the character. So let's just in advance say what the character of this street is and not leave it up to people to figure out on the fly with Brian Mooney. Give him something to refer to.
Craig, any reactions to that? And Sheldon, I might want to try to capture your question and also share it with Ben Rohr as well, just to get his feedback. But Craig, any reaction to that?
So yeah, I think this is an engineering exercise. There's a cost involved with asking Brian to do that for every street. Certainly is something that's doable. I don't know what what the effort is. He could estimate it, but maybe 2 hours, 3 hours per street. And he can't use DCI map. He kind of has to. I don't know how he'd do measurements. Maybe he would use DCI map, or maybe he has some other tools that are better for that. But he may have to go street by street with a laser measuring thing and do it that way too.
So Craig, you put up the van der Waal.
Yeah,
language?
is it? It's sharing probably minimum
It is.
yard dimensions. Okay, so this is
Yep.
their language, and you can see it talks about 5 or fewer adjoining. It talks about infill lots. I mentioned earlier that at first I really like this idea of infill lots, but then when I think about natural disasters, which we have had, or development of Blackhawk,
Yeah.
we, having this only apply to infill lots is not right. Maybe if it's an infill lot, it does that average of the neighbors. And if it's not an infill lot, then it does, the 25%, maybe something like that might be a possibility. But these other things are kind of, nice. The outliers, I mentioned outliers defined as yards, greater than or equal to twice that of the next largest setback, exclude those. So, and there's also an absolute minimum here. The Van de Waal language was assuming that they were moving the setback line less than 25 feet. So they also set an absolute minimum of 10 feet for the front yard setback. Yeah, the mean. So this is the average language, Mark, that you were kind of asking about, and
Right.
we certainly could change the minimum setback to be the mean, but then again, we would have to include these other clauses about like which properties to use and what happens if they're vacant and what if they're outliers, and there's just a bunch of other things that are a little bit trickier. Definitely can be handled though.
So other comments from commissioners? Mark?
Yeah, so I'm just looking at your memo, Craig, from back on September 4th. And it talks about refers to Van de Waal and the robust scenario and what they call frontage averaging. And there's a phrase in here, this is referring to these block rule, where it says the average of those existing setbacks. So that's language maybe as an alternative to what you have currently, where it's specifying it doesn't have to necessarily be the average, it could be the minimum, but it makes the reference to those existing setbacks, which clearly takes you back to that 25% or more of the block. There's just that phrase. It appears, you can look at it at some point, but it's on page 3 of your memo of.
Let's see if it's on this. I think that was a did that make it into the packet?
It's not in the packet.
Yeah, it was a separate.
But it's just this phrasing of, the average or the minimum, but then it says of those existing setbacks shall establish the minimum setback line for new construction. And I just find that very clear, whether it's the average or the minimum. I don't think there's much ambiguity with it.
Let me pull that up. Okay, I think I have it here. Let me share. Is this the document you're talking about?
Was a memo, so don't recognize that
No.
language.
Okay.
I don't think that's it.
This is not it. Plan. Okay, you said September. This would have been August, right?
Yeah, this was it was an email sent by you on Thursday, September 4th, to Brian.
Okay, that was just. Well, would you mind sharing it? If you have it on a computer?
I just have it in paper form.
Hold it up to the camera. Here, I will go check my email box.
Whatever. I don't have it electronic.
Yeah. So this was sent to Brian Mooney on September 4th. Okay, yeah. So this is the email with a quick fix. Let's see.
There's a couple of emails on September 4.
It's actually, I guess, a email of September 3rd,
Third,
which is
yeah.
attached to the September 4th.
So I think it must be this one. Is this sharing? Oops, sharing is
I'm not
pause.
sure.
Oh, come
Yeah.
on, stop. Hang on, start again. Okay, you're seeing an email now?
We are under
Yes.
robust. Yep, that's the one. Yep.
That's the one.
Okay.
And you go down here, if you go down a little bit, it says frontage averaging.
Mhm.
And then in the second line of that, it says the average of those existing setbacks. I just like that phrasing. It makes it very clear that this new setback is the average of those setbacks in the preceding part of the sentence.
Yeah, this was kind of a first stab. This would need to be qualified with what to do with those outliers and vacant lots, but that could be added as a sub item. Under A, there'd be one, vacant lots are excluded from the calculation. Two, outliers are excluded, defined as properties that are set back more than twice the average or something. So,
Or or it could even read the minimum of those existing setbacks.
that would be I see. So basically take this language, change it to minimum. So this tries to do average, but let's go minimum like the packet materials, but use the
Take
rest of
that
this language.
minimum and then just put that into the existing language that you've got that you circulated to the planning commission.
I can do that. Yeah, that again in the packet I tried to make as few changes and preserve as much of the old language, but I agree. This is more clear than the setbacks so here established, and the kind of the fancier style language. Okay. So I guess do other people agree with that idea? Because I can go ahead and add that to the language that we kind of move forward.
Yeah. Reactions from commission members?
I definitely, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Shabna.
Yeah, yes, we shouldn't do something that will injure or, people with smaller setbacks. And this is good for them. I like it. I think, Mark, great idea. Great, excellent. It's in the right direction.
So we've been working mostly off the robust, and I haven't heard any objections to us continuing to do that. Craig, you feel like you can incorporate this tweak?
Yes, I think I have two tweaks that are needed for sure. One is to use this language, this style of language, for the block face rule. A few things. This says new construction. I have to change that to be new construction or alterations. There's a few things that made it in the packet materials that aren't in here, but I'll reconcile those. The second one is that notwithstanding clause, to make sure that it's clear that the block face rule supersedes the standard setback. So those are the two things for sure. There was still that open question about should the 40-foot buildable depth be reintroduced as this. I'm of the opinion that it probably doesn't need to be, but I also heard some comments that says, oh, we should still have that.
Commission reactions to that 40-foot depth. Yeah, I personally wanted to see that addressed fully to prevent some of the the ambiguities and the interpretations that we've had recently.
But I guess it wasn't clear to me though, if you're saying shall not reduce the buildable depth of any lot to less than 40 feet, where do you encroach to get your 40 feet? I mean, wasn't that the very issue that arose on Sweetbriar? It's the direction. I mean, if we decide that yes, no lot should be less than 40 feet, then the question is, if the setbacks don't allow it, what setback is changed or relaxed in order to permit it? And if it was the front setback, that was a problem.
Right.
Yeah, and that's that block face rule and the 40-foot buildable depth all fell under the front yard setback, and so that was the only thing that could yield. But that 40-foot buildable depth only ever applied to this, 25% more. We call this the block face rule. It should have only applied there. It was just in a legal argument last fall that said, no, it doesn't just apply here. It actually applies to the 25-foot setback as well. And that was a very novel legal argument. But it seemed to have won the day for at least one house. So part of the work we're doing tonight is to make sure that does not happen again. Make sure it's clear.
Shabnam, Mike, you see your hand up?
Sure, thanks, John. I mean, we can imagine we don't know the exact history of the 40-foot depth clause, but we could understand that the point of it is to preserve property owners having some rights because there's so much regulation. It's to make sure they have that. If we were to delete it, which we could, you could insert it elsewhere, like being a little bit generous on FAR and leaving attics alone or a basement or something else if we wanted to preserve that sometimes your lot can be so small and there can be so many restrictions that you're left without a house. You're just, that's the point is. That's it.
Okay. So Craig, other things you want to talk to on the robust version?
No, I think if you're comfortable that I have a good idea, I understand this language. This says frontage averaging. Historically, we've called it a block face rule, even though block face sounds like Charlie Brown. It doesn't really, you have to think about it a bit to figure out what block face rule kind of is referring to. Is it okay if I call it block face rule still, just because that's what we've all been calling it for the last couple months?
Reactions to that question?
I'm good with that.
You're good with that, Mark?
I'm going to switch back to the other window. There we go. Yeah, so it would still say block face rule, but I would replace, I would update this language to be much more clear based on that email memo. If people are comfortable with those two changes, I'll update this. And I will add something about notwithstanding, the previous ones. So
Right.
this one will be clear that this only applies as if it's, let's see, notwithstanding. So the minimum is 25, but these go the other direction. It's not an or choice. You don't have an or choice for it. This will apply, and if this doesn't apply, then this applies. One or two.
Yeah, the other way you could do it, Craig, is you could just move the block face and the exceptions to the front and say anything that does not meet those rules, everything else is 25 feet. But that might be a little different than we've done it elsewhere in the ordinance.
Yeah, that's
I'm not helping you, you understand.
yeah. There's some really smart people in this village with legal writing. I will try to find the one that's the least impactful and the easiest to read. That makes it clear that that this is an exception. So,
And Ben Rohr's going to weigh in on this as well.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're going to make those tweaks, Craig. Then we're going to share those with Ben Rohr and get his response. And based on that, we're going to have what folks are going to participate in the public hearing with respect to the setbacks. Brian, you'll share that final version with Plan Commission members?
Yes, I will share it with the entire commission, and Ben and John Shabnan has a question here.
Oh, sorry, Shabnam. Go ahead, Shabnam.
So, you asked about the 40-foot depth. I made a comment. I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to comment as well. So I do think we should discuss it.
Okay.
If we are going to delete it and not, save the purpose of it elsewhere, then you need to increase your lot sizes. Because sometimes depending on the year, the market is crazy and you got to put in an offer to get a spot and you don't have time to read all the zoning rules and ordinances because that's just the way the market is. So to buy a property and then realize I can only build a 1,200-foot, I can't build the space I need isn't fair. If you're going to remove it and have these restrictions, make the minimum lot size 6,000 or 7,000. That's just my thought, but others should chime in on this.
Reactions to that, Craig? Any initial reaction?
So the minimum lot area, it's 9,000 for R1, but
Right.
For R2 it's 5,000. And when we first had that CSM issue in January, that was kind of my thought is the first thing is, hey, a 5,000 square foot lot, there's so many ways for that to go wrong, for it to become unbuildable. It's too narrow, it's crooked. I mean, it seemed like it was just inviting problems based on our other ordinances. And it seemed like an easy fix would be, oh, let's make this 6,000 square feet. But I've since, gone back and said, no, it's got to stay at 5,000. This has too many other dependencies. Too many things in R1 depend on this number not changing. For example, the date that change, if we did change it, the date that change took place, all the laws after that would apply to some houses, but not other houses in the village. And it gets to be a little tough. As far as the 40-foot depth, as I think I've mentioned, there's so many other restrictions on these small lots if they get to be close to 5,000 square feet. If they're 6,000 or 7,000, they really don't have problems. It's only these super small ones. And the question is whether we should address those in language here. And it would be clear, it would be more clarity. But as I tried to show on DCI map with those that one property, it's just really hard to predict when and where those are going to pop pop up, especially if they result from a division. If someone does a CSM and does some crazy lot lines, we can't anticipate what sort of lightning bolt patterns they might make in the lot lines. And it's I think there's still room for adding those, adding more language as we come across situations. But I think this language at least gets us into a safer place where those situations are automatically going to be going before a human, the zoning board of appeals, to figure out what's the right thing. Should they reduce the front yard setback or the rear yard setback, or should they suggest rotating the house, or whatever? I trust that they will work with the landowner to find something that works for everybody, and is least. I think the term at the last ZBA hearing, the term was whatever does the least amount of damage to the zoning code for any given building permit.
Other thoughts, reactions? We move this forward? I mean, are we pretty much in agreement that this would be what we've discussed tonight is going to help us ensure, neighborhood character in Sherwood Hills?
Well, ensure is probably too strong a word.
What's a good word? Improve?
We're moving in the right direction, but we're never going to get there because there's just so many different lots, different houses. It's the nature of Shorewood to be different. So I think we just have to work towards the good and not the perfect. You'll never get perfect here. And you just want to, seems to me, minimize the number of instances that fall through to the zoning board of appeal and the zone administrator. Just try to keep that number down, but you're always going to have an appeal.
Well, is this good enough? Jim, I haven't heard from you on this. Your thoughts? You're the veteran.
I kind of agree with what Mark just got done saying there. Yeah, I think that if we get to a place that we feel reasonably comfortable, we're not causing more problems than we started with. I think we brought a lot of clarity to this. That's for sure.
Okay, good. Craig, this was yeoman's work. I mean, you've really helped the commission, and I know you enjoy the work as well. So
It's a little bit of a headache too, but yes, I've learned a lot doing this.
So from your perspective, since you're still this is still a heavy lift for you. Obviously, you're going to work, with Brian and with me and with Ben on this. So anything else you were hoping to get from us tonight in terms of feedback or other things you wanted to raise?
Well, I would like to get to the second section, but I think first I would love to have make a motion to forward this on with the two modifications we talked about for the public meeting.
Okay. Is that your motion?
I think that's my motion. Did I say it correctly?
That was good. I think David Sykes, you caught that.
Can you just clarify the modifications so he has it?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we'll use the forward on the robust front setback rules with modifications for the block face rule to use the averaging the language from a memo that I'd sent before preparing this that was more clear. You can call it the September 3rd memo, and to add some language to ensure that the block face rule is notwithstanding the minimum setbacks set in 1 or 2. To make sure that the block face rule is subordinate or never can exceed these.
Yeah, David Sykes, it's a good thing that we're taping this. Did you have a question or did you want to make a comment?
No, I think I can get it from there.
Okay, splendid. Does someone want to second that motion? Mark? Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. That motion carries. Okay, and then so we've got some legwork on this. We're gonna get back to the commission. The public hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, September 30th. That's gonna be at 7 o'clock, correct, Brian Mooney?
I believe we kept it at the exact same time, 7.
Okay. And then my understanding, and Brian, you can correct me, that the village board process on this would require 3 readings at 2 separate meetings. Plus the committee recommendation.
I thought I read differently.
That was, Brian, do you want to clear that up, or David Sykes, you want to clear that up? I thought we asked Bill Cole, our village attorney, that.
There was an EV ordinance
Yeah,
that the plan commission sent to the board.
But Brian, why don't you answer real quick?
I'm sorry. I just asked the question of Bill Cole, and he advised it did require the 3 readings.
2 separate meetings.
Correct.
So we can confirm that. I mean, obviously, we want to try to get it done sooner if we can. But if there's a statutory limitation, then we'll have to deal with it. I want to make a mention on that. Craig?
So there was an EV ordinance the plan commission forwarded to a public meeting and then onto the board earlier this year.
Yeah.
I thought it only had one reading at the board. It was a yes or no, but I could be wrong. But that was just.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but we will we'll confirm it again. I remember seeing our attorney weighed in, and he's got 35 years experience, kind of lives it, breathes it, dreams it. So that's where I go, just for the confirmation.
Okay,
all right.
Let's make sure, John, when we do that, we understand the full process. This question that I had about the discretion of the plan commission to alter the language during the course of the public hearing.
Yeah.
Just the whole process from the time that something is referred on to the public hearing all the way to board approval. What are the ground rules?
Okay. Yeah, and I should have that ready to go before the board meeting on Tuesday as well.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we're through robust. Craig, what else did you want to talk about tonight?
So the other one were 3 changes. These have been whittled down to the residential floor area and height limitation. And again, if we have consensus on 1, 2, or all 3 of these, I would love to forward them on to the same public meeting. But these are all taken independently, and I think we can all choose whether we have consensus or not, or whether they need to stay in plan commission for a while.
Yeah, and I'll be all ears in terms of what the commission says. But I'll want to have, Brian Berquist, in the room when this discussion's happening, and so that he can react to it, since he's the implementer on it. But why don't you take us through for right now? Let's have a robust discussion at least. We may not be able to advance it for this next hearing, but let's get through it.
Okay.
All right.
The first change, again, I think most of these we've talked about before, and this is one that has been run by Brian Berquist. He helped come up with the language, and that this is a technicality. If you look at the old language that's been struck out, and then the new language, the old language was ambiguous. It talked about more than 1 walls. It had an inconsistent use of grammar there.
Yeah.
And then basements with more than 1 walls don't really exist that often. So anyway, this new one brings the ordinance in line with the formula that Brian Berquist is currently using to calculate the basement percentage, with one exception. and again, this is also with Berquist's contribution, we had a problem with the old ordinance and with partially buried basements. And it was kind of unclear, if someone, it used to have the term completely exposed. And well, if somebody puts a foot of dirt against the side of the wall, is that wall exposed or not? So this new language talks about the perimeter measuring it from the vertical midpoint above the natural grade of the finished grade of the property. Basically, is the wall more than halfway buried? And if it's more than halfway buried, it's basement. If it's less than halfway buried, it's exposed. And again, this was something that Brian said that he could calculate without issue from the building plans that are provided. So it does not burden him in having to get, additional measurements or.
So he saw all this language and signed
He's-
off on it?
He's seen this language and signed
Mhm.
off on it.
Okay. Any reactions? Let's just go one by one here. Any reactions, concerns, comments, questions on this proposed change? Shabna?
I would prefer basements to not be included. I know I'm in the minority. I will just state my piece and not try to influence anyone.
Other comments, thoughts, questions, concerns?
I guess, Craig, this is really, it's not so much trying to change the calculation, it's just trying to make the calculation easier, is it not? I mean, it's more explicit.
It's yes, I mean the calculation is being done closer to this new language than the old language. Right now, the calculation is being done inconsistent with the ordinance, and that there was actually an effort in Plan Commission in 2009 to change that, to fix that, but I guess it fizzled or something happened. It never went anywhere. So it's just been swept under the rug since then. But this puts in language that makes it clear,
Yeah.
what a exposed part of the basement is.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
If I could address Shabnam's point.
Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
We definitely on future plan commission, and I think something kind of talked about is to get an ad hoc committee going of more substantive changes to FAR to make it more fair for very small properties and for also the very large properties, because those are the two that are currently being squeezed a bit. But yeah, at this point, basements are included, and this just changes the formula for it. But I'm definitely open to larger discussions about that.
Okay. Should we move on to change number 2 then?
Sure.
Okay.
So change number 2 is just clarifying that garage formula guidance about the basements that has been talked about. The negative results that have been known to creep into garage basement scenarios. We've talked about it a lot. I have more information I can share on that. I can take people through it if they want need a refresher on what it is. But the end result is right now there's and the way the math is done in Microsoft Excel creates a situation where there's a basement can count as a negative square footage. And that kind of flies in the face of a normal reading of this. The normal reading says the first 500 square feet of garage space is not included. It should be excluded. It doesn't say that you can take some of that and use it, upstairs to make your upstairs larger. So the language change, it just says, hey, this subtraction will be done in that gross horizontal area before applying any other adjustments, where the other adjustment right now, the only other one is the basement percentage. So
Shabna?
I think this makes things more complicated unnecessarily. The problem is not with the way the ordinance is written. The problem is its implementation. So municipalities are required by law to abide by their own ordinances. We just need to abide by ours. I gave John Imes an example earlier today because I mentioned this to him. It's like everybody's blowing through a stop sign, and we want to write an ordinance saying you have to stop at the stop sign for 3 seconds. You don't need to do that. Just enforce the ordinance. Fix the spreadsheet, not the code. The code's not the problem. The spreadsheet is. And given how many houses, I mean, you drive through this neighborhood, a garage is here, a garage is there, now it's under here. It's incredible, the diversity of houses. I think this adds ambiguity and complexity that doesn't exist.
Yeah, if I can, I'll scroll down real quick
Yeah,
because
go
I
ahead.
think you read my mind, Shabnam. As an alternative to changing ordinance, we can also just direct the village engineer to follow this language as a policy. So the idea of policy versus ordinance, I completely agree. The ordinance today is plain, but a lot of people have started arguing that it actually is intent, that there's an intent to incentivize basement garages or something, which is I've talked to the Plan Commission of 2006 that passed it, and nobody there has any recollection of any sort of intent to encourage a certain type of garage. So anyway, we definitely could skip the ordinance change, keep it more clear, and simply direct the village engineer to follow the language. We could do that with a motion tonight.
And if I could just add, you don't need a policy to follow ordinances. You are required by law to follow your ordinances. And you could refer to the Supreme Court's decision in the Accardi case for that.
And Craig,
But the problem is we're not dealing with a stop sign here.
Right.
We're dealing with language which is subject to interpretation.
This is clear though. It's crystal clear. We're just not following it. That's all we're doing is we need to follow it.
So,
and to be clear, I'm sorry, to be clear, I'm so sorry. I actually really wanted the opposite. I'm advocating for following the law, even though I kind of wish that basements would get that credit, because I think I would like people to have more leniency with FAR. I want people to use their property the way they want to use it, but the law requires us to follow the law, and that has to stand first before my personal opinions.
This, I think, am I sharing a garage space and a non-garage space?
you are, Craig.
Okay, so this is, again, a very simple exercise, but to Mark's point, you've got these two things. You've got the basement percentage and you've got this credit, and the order you do them in, to me, it seems very clear that the first thing you do is you subtract your 500 square foot. First do that, and your basement is left with 100 square feet of garage space. And then you've got this other part. Your garage is, or your basement is now 500 square feet, and then you multiply that by the 20%. But the rule that's been done right now is kind of the opposite, where first you do them with 20%, then you got a couple options about what you do after that. And you can get numbers like minus 300 or 80 or 100, which is the same as on the previous one. And, to Mark's point, some people are arguing now that this is the way to interpret this ordinance. I think the first 500 square feet of garage space is crystal clear. I completely agree with you, Shabnam. But as long as people argue that maybe it's not so clear, and lawyers can be, pretty good with language, and trying to shore it up so that it's more bulletproof. It was kind of what my thinking was.
And Craig, you've you've explored this with Brian Berquist as well?
He knows all about this since
Yeah.
May. We've gone back and
Right.
forth. It came up at the recent ZBA
Right.
hearing. He explains it. Here's some quotes from the Plan Commission about it if you want to read those. Here's Brian's some language from him, and as well as Carl Franz about it. And Brian, he's a numbers guy. He wants things to be simple, and he's very clear that it's a function of mathematical operations, the order that they were done in this Excel spreadsheet, rather than
Right.
any sort of intent to change the outcome. And in some situations, the answer is the same. In some types of properties, you get the same result regardless, but in other types of properties, you get very different results. And so, yeah, Brian said he doesn't want to convince us that it should make sense. It's just how it's applied. Mark Sundquist had an interesting thing. I talked to him a little bit about that. And so he was on the Plan Commission in 2006, and he doesn't remember anything about the garages or basement garages. And he said, there appeared to be virtue in both changing the text to match the spreadsheet, but also in fixing the spreadsheet to match the text. And I completely agree with that. If we want to incentivize basement garages, that's perfectly fine, but then we have to change the language in that direction. But I think this has been far more time than this subject needs. I think just directing Brian to do the math in the simple reading of the text in that order, I think probably is all the Plan Commission needs to do.
But that's not an ordinance change.
Not an ordinance change.
Right. Okay.
It would just. Let me go back to the other sharing. I think I'm finally getting the hang of sharing. Okay, so that was the garage formula guidance. And then the third one, it gets to be a little stranger, but I also mentioned this last month, and the best way to go through this is actually to go through some examples. But this has to do with natural grade versus finished grade. And we saw a property try to take advantage of the fact that natural grade and finished grade are very different things. So there were some examples at the bottom of the packet, but I'm actually going to go back to. I cleaned it up to make it a little bit more clear. So I'm going to share. This again. Slideshow. Okay. Okay. So is everybody seeing a screen that has the original language in the upper right with the maximum height?
Yep.
Okay. So here's a lot. It's a hilly lot. And you can sort of see right now the street is on the lower left, but in these diagrams, streets move around. The natural grade is the land as it exists. And our maximum height ordinance measures the height of the structure from natural grade. So, here's the house going up the hill with multiple tiers. Looks very nice. It's built into the land. That's perfectly allowed. Same thing if the street is on the upper right. This is like Lake Mendota Drive. As you go down, as long as you are above the natural grade, you're fine. But then we have these excavated houses on the next level. And this is a case where the finished grade has been excavated down below the natural grade. Well, the height is still being measured from natural grade, even though it's been obliterated. So for example, this would be permitted, even though, you can see that this red is the maximum height, and you can see the house is taller than it. Same thing from the street. We have this grade on the back that's, this height that's much taller. If we think about it, what would be more sensible is that if we have a finished grade, then you have your maximum height, and then, that should be measured from finished grade in addition to natural grade. I think last month, Tessa, I think you might have had some comments about this. So that's why I have a few more situations. This is the original language. Now this is what's in the packet. And that basically stops this situation. It it uses the lower of the natural grade, which is kind of this dotted line, and the finished grade, which is the straight one, where the finished grade is measured from below the roof closest to the road. So it makes this one where the street facing cannot exceed the top. But then I also heard some comments that one of the reasons for this had to do with our old fire department and the height of our ladders and some things. We don't have those issues anymore, but it's still a concern even on the backside. So even if the house, even if the car and the street is up here, there's still a problem with this side of the house being so much taller than the maximum height. So the language in the packet, after I put that in, only cared about this situation, but then someone said, hey, I got to care about this situation too. So I've got a revised version of what the language could be that would also prevent this one. This one is the lowest finish grade below the nearest roof edge. So look at the roof and where it goes and where the finish grade is below it, and then you'd calculate it. So I know this is a lot, and this is, if any of these we're not going to move on, this is probably one of them because it's kind of ugly. And so far, it's only affected one building permit, but I guarantee it's one that we're going to see more. And so we do need to address this at some point when people are comfortable with it.
Craig, did Brian Berquist speak to this at all? Because I always thought they just looked at the natural grade at the beginning. They really didn't get into the, excavating it out and then measuring it.
So the building, the surveys that are sent with the building plans include the natural grade, the topography,
Right,
and that's
right.
what's used to measure to the roof.
Right.
But if it's excavated below, Ryan's, I got two answers from him, and I've worked with him a little bit on this. He says that he goes by the finish grade, but that's not what's in ordinance. And at 1202 Sweetbriar, it was clearly, the house was 4 feet too tall from finish grade, but it was perfectly fine for the natural grade. So this is definitely one I would be very happy to go through this with Brian, and I would feel more comfortable moving this forward if he was able to chime in.
So he hasn't seen this language yet?
He has seen half of this language.
Okay.
We talked about the lower of finish and natural grade. The problem with that is the finish grade under the it's kind of hard. The natural grade is measured from any point on the roof. So you go anywhere on the point, you just go straight
Right.
down and figure out
Right.
the natural grade. Problem is the finish grade, it's not always perfectly straight like this. It might be angled, it might have its own ups and downs. So the question is which part of the finish grade you measure against. And so that's where I had the roof edge. Use the roof edge and go down below that. He has not seen that.
Okay. Yeah, because he always told me that it was at any point, across the roof. At any point, it had to be below 34 feet or whatever the max was.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the house at 1202 did exactly that, where, the bottom of the roof was exactly the height limit, and then above natural grade. And then the peak of the roof was exactly at the height limit above natural grade. But of course, natural grade was 2 or 3 feet higher at that point. So the house ended up being, I think, 3.5 feet taller than it should have been. So.
Okay, any reactions to this? Questions, comments, thoughts? I'm personally, I'm gonna want to hear from Brian and Brian Berquist on this. And Shabna?
Well, first, Craig, you put in a lot of work in this. It's hours and hours of time, PowerPoint presentation, photos, images, red lines, colors. And I commend you for that. I know it's exhausting. I realize that we as a community recognize technicalities in the code that needs to be addressed, and we are certainly taking action to address those. But I worry if we are going too far. We're already extremely regulated, and this is if I get out of that mindset and I just think of zoning codes in other municipalities, I think we might be going a little too far at this point.
Yeah, if I could respond to that, that's that's definitely a fair case. And one other way to address these super tall faces is somewhere else. There are, I think City of Madison has the articulation thing where you can't have just a straight wall that goes up, beyond a certain height. It's not a height restriction, but it's a vertical wall restriction. So there are maybe some other ways that might be able to address this problem while also addressing some other concerns that are more aesthetic in the neighborhood. In this case, though, also the finished grade is a very real thing. Excavations do happen, and this idea that we set our house designs based on an invisible line that might have been excavated, down 8 or 10 feet. Who knows in some of these hills that we have. This again, we've seen one property that has taken advantage of this, and I'm sure it won't be the last. And it is a technical thing, and I apologize for the dryness of it too.
Other thoughts? So Craig, I don't think we're going to do anything with the height.
Okay.
And I'm going to want to, I understand what you're saying with the garage formula. I don't know if commission members feel more strongly. I feel more comfortable hearing directly from the person that's running the numbers. I hope you can understand that. I don't know how the commission members feel about that. And Mark?
Yeah, just again, a procedural question. Are we allowed in the public hearing to talk about these kind of issues if that's not the ordinance language which we're actually recommending? In other words, we have this opportunity coming up,
Right.
forum, and clearly these are the kinds of issues that we need more public input. I mean,
Yep.
it's hard for us to get our arms around it, and it's going to be hard for the public. And so I'm wondering how it is, especially with this height issue, that we can get an informed public on the topic.
Shabnam, you had a follow-up?
Well, first, just a quick thought that came to my mind. If I had a house, let's say Lake Mendota Drive, or there's some houses I see where the garage is at the street level and the house is a lot lower. So now I don't get the 500 square foot deduction because it has to be subtracted from the horizontal area, and that might be my attic. So if my garage was lower, I get it. But since my house is lower, I'm penalized by this.
Well, no, the garage would basically disappear, so it wouldn't count towards your FAR at all in that case. The first 500 square feet of garage space doesn't matter if it's in the basement, on the first floor, it could be in the second floor with a elevator lift, or it could be if it's the only thing on the second or third floor. You
But
still
it
get
says but it says from the horizontal line. What if that horizontal line is nothing? Like it's my
well, that horizontal line will at least include the garage. So if there's a garage, if that's the only structure up there, like a detached garage, that's
Okay.
that'll
Okay.
the garage
All right.
disappears.
Thanks. Let me think about that. Thanks. I think you answered it.
And Brian, I notice your hand is raised. I can't call on you. Discussions within the commission right now, and I noted the comments that you provided. If you have a additional question or comment you want to provide to Brian Mooney, you can, email him accordingly. And then the basement perimeter issue. So maybe I'm misreading the room. I do it all the time. I'm not hearing, Craig, that, we want this teed up for the next public hearing, but I could be wrong. I mean, I personally want to have, Brian Berquist and Brian Mooney, discuss this further and have it be discussed further within Plan Commission.
Could we forward it to the public meeting, conditional on that? And hopefully Brian can find some time before the meeting, or at the very least at the meeting, where, like Mark was saying, with revising language,
Yeah.
Either revise these or jettison them altogether if they're deemed not necessary.
Yeah, I prefer that we do. I prefer that we do a little bit more. I'm mindful of the time too. We're 9:15, and
Yeah.
staff and so Ben Rohr's got a lot to weigh in on this. And then Brian Berquist has a lot to weigh in on this. So I'd like to have an additional Plan Commission discussion.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So unless, a majority of the commission feels differently, that's kind of where I am. And, at this point, I thought we did really good work with the setback. I'm excited about getting that teed up and getting that passed and getting it recommended and advanced to the board while we deal with, some of these other related issues.
Yeah, but John, do check with Bill Cole or Brian.
I will.
Find out if, it's just like on a board agenda where we have things that are discussion and possible action.
Yeah.
These kind of FAR issues could be just discussion at the board meeting. I mean, at the public hearing, if that's possible.
Right.
Where we're saying we're not going to take any action, but we're going to take advantage of this public forum to advance these kinds of ideas.
Okay. So Craig, we'll evaluate. It's been a while since we had a process like this. So it's to Mark's point, it'd be good to ask that question. Brian Mooney, you understand what's being asked on that?
Yeah, I was just gonna double check with David. I think the public hearing language that got published pertained specifically to the setbacks.
David, that's right, David Sykes?
Actually, we have not published it just yet
Oh,
because the date allowed us to wait until after this meeting to
okay.
get it set up. So
Okay.
whatever you guys decide on to include in the public hearing, we can include. But if you're only gonna forward the
setback.
setbacks for an ordinance change, that's all we need to publish. You
Mhm.
can put on the agenda that you're gonna discuss the rest of it at that meeting as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. Just
Okay.
saying that the setbacks is discussion, possible action, but these other FAR issues are discussion only.
Okay. And go ahead, Shabna.
I just think that's an excellent idea. I think, like Mark, you're on a roll tonight.
I know, I'm loving it. And
I
then,
just want to get something done.
and then, where do we introduce or discuss the changes that happen within building envelopes with respect to the FAR? I mean, I've heard from several folks that, should we really be worried if someone takes an attic space and adds a bedroom? If they're not changing the building envelope of an existing building.
Like you, John, that's what I would like to see. I think if if you got a unfinished attic or even a finished attic, but now you decide to remodel it, but you're not changing the envelope,
Yeah.
why should anybody care? Why should it add to FAR? I mean, it shouldn't be an issue to my mind. So I would like to see that as, if we have FAR as a discussion only item at the meeting, I would like to see the building envelope issue raised as well, so people can remodel their attics.
I can present, I wasn't going to, but I can present some information from Brian Berquist on that that I shared with Shabnam, but I think everybody would probably benefit from it. Brian Berquist sent me every FAR calculation that he's done in the last 10 years. And I was trying to find, sorry, this is a very busy, lot of, and I can send this to people in email also. So I did some analysis of the calculations he's done. Now, the calculations he's done are usually for people that are remodeling or something, but there are a few calculations just for houses that exist and are unchanged. And you can see that the first thing I found is that attics are extremely rare. In 10 years, only 5 houses have shown attics of any significance in terms of the floor area ratio. And this makes, just like you were saying, we could just eliminate attics, just not even count them in the floor area ratio, and that would not cause major disruption. Mary was telling me that architects will, be able to find ways to sneak things in the attic. I'm like, well, if it doesn't change the building envelope, maybe that's okay. Like you said, there was also mention that maybe basements could be jettisoned, and unfortunately, basements are all over the place with their contribution to the floor area ratio. These are the square footage. This list of numbers. Sorry, it's kind of hard to read. From anywhere from minus 337 up to 1185 is the basement contributions, and 40% of houses seem to have exposed basements that have been done. So that's, we can't just throw out basements, but maybe we can do them smarter. Maybe there's some things we can do to make them, more fair. And in this last one, I've tried to find a shortcut to see if we could use the assessor data to estimate changes to our floor area ratio. Because right now, the real problem is if we make changes to FAR, we don't know what happens. We don't know the collateral damage. We're all thinking about, a couple houses, but, we've got 600 or 700 houses in the village, so we don't know what's going to happen. I found kind of a loose correlation, within 10% of about half the properties in the village. So about half the properties in the village there's a correlation between the FAR and what's called the square foot living area that the assessor keeps track of. And that's, if you've ever had an assessment done or an appraisal, they always have those numbers, and that gets into the assessor data. But the other half are way out of there, 65% off, 37% off, or 32% off. So there's no shortcut. Long story short, it's kind of hard to do an analysis of FAR without actually doing the calculations. One question was, well, can Brian just do FAR calculations for every house in the village, or like maybe a random sample, like 10 or 15 or 20? I think that would probably be a good idea and a good use of funds, and something for maybe the board to authorize. Just so we have a baseline of, if we are making changes to FAR, what would kind of the average expected impact be across existing houses? So anyway, I wasn't planning on sharing this, and I'm sorry it came across kind of, again, techie and nerdy, but
it's good analysis. It really is good analysis.
But it's kind of, I found it kind of interesting. I really was thankful that Brian was sharing that information.
Well, and I haven't thought through too. I mean, if we ever turn the page to ADUs at some point, that's also gonna take into account the FAR. And I know we talked there about the first 500 square feet of accessory buildings wouldn't be counted, but the next 500 feet would. And if it went a little bit, more than that, I think we said what, a maximum 1,000 square feet for an ADU. That's my recollection, that draft policy. So I think it'll be good to understand the consequences of that unintended or otherwise. So, and that's something that Brian can help us with as well. Okay, other things for tonight?
Could we agree to get rid of attics? Consider it?
I'd like it to be included during the discussion we have about FAR at the, if we can do it at the public hearing meeting, I think that would be great.
That would be, I just support that. I think, the public meeting can be focused on getting the one thing through, but since
Yeah.
we got everybody in the room, let's talk about FAR.
Yeah, I think now, depending on how big the public hearing is, if it's a 3-hour public hearing, that's going to limit our discussion, but we'll find out. I think these changes are going to be, I think they're going to be pretty well received. I think that's the expectation. All right. So are we ready to move on then with the agenda? Craig, great
ready.
job again. Go ahead, Shabnam.
I'm ready to adjourn.
You're ready to adjourn. Well, let's get to that. There are some future agenda items on the agenda. I don't need to call any of those out right now, but they're still there, and we could provide updates going forward. The special meeting again is Tuesday the 30th, correct? Because we've got 2 dates on here, David Sykes.
Correct.
Yep. So it is Tuesday, September 30th at 7 o'clock. And then our regular meeting would be a couple weeks later on Tuesday, October 14th. Craig, I see your hand up.
The future item for fence code, could we add retaining walls to that? There's a lot of commonalities between the two, and we discovered that retaining walls are not well covered in the village.
Yep. It's been added. We won't discuss it here, but it's David Sykes has just added it, so it'll be on the future agenda. All right. I'll ask for a motion for adjournment then. Shabnam?
I motion to adjourn.
Thanks so much. Do we have a second? Thank you, Mark. Nice to see everyone. Craig, again, great job kind of walking us through all these changes. Really appreciate your good work. Appreciate your collaboration with the professionals as well, working closely with Brian Mooney and Brian Berquist and Ben Rohr and with me, and look forward to landing this plane, right, Shabnam? We're going to land this plane at the public hearing. Nice to see everyone, and
Say goodbye.
yeah, have a nice, pleasant evening.
Have a good night.
All right.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks.